Well, good morning, YouTube. All right, guys, in the last video where we featured the Power Queen battery, we were hooking it up in my trailer and testing it to make sure it would run all of the high amp loads in the trailer. And it passed that test with flying colors and has been working great in there ever since. We did talk a little bit in that video about capacities and watt hours and so on and so forth. And I thought maybe it would be a good idea to compare. So these are the two batteries that I took out of the trailer. And this is the battery that Power Queen has supplied to me. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. They supplied me the battery at no cost to me. So the battery was free, and they did ask that I do a review video. But a little history on me is I've been doing a lot of research over the last couple of years on lithium iron phosphate batteries. And as you guys know, I did an off-grid system on Goliath about 2 years ago, and I used the lithium iron phosphate technology batteries in there, along with the Victron Multi-Plus 2 inverter and solar charge controller, the whole 9 yards. And eventually we're going to build a system like that, probably for the trailer, give it its own system, just because I think it'll be fun. Not really that it needs it, but I think it'll be fun to do. So I'm not just a guy that knows nothing about batteries that Power Queen decided to send a battery to. I mean, I do have a little bit of history, and I'm definitely not an expert on the subject, but I've learned quite a bit over the last couple of years. And I was really excited to receive this battery because I wanted more lithium batteries. Anyway, back to capacities. We had talked about this battery having almost double the capacity that these batteries have, if not more. And we're going to experiment with that a little bit. So I'm going to hook up a power inverter to these, and we're going to run a continuous high watt load. And we're going to see how long these batteries last compared to how long this battery lasts. Now, before starting this test, I charged up the Power Queen battery absolutely 100% to the top. Now, like I said, Power Queen supplied me the battery. They did not supply me with a charger. So I went to Power Queen's website and I bought a charger specific for this battery, or this chemistry battery. So here we have the Power Queen 14.6 volt, 40 amp lithium iron phosphate battery charger. One of the things I really like about this charger is that it comes with the Anderson connector, and you can see there's another one there on top of the battery. So I'm going to leave that permanently attached to the battery, and when I need to charge it, I just plug this in. Now, the trailer had an inverter type charger in it already, but it's not really set up for lithium iron phosphate chemistry. So when we go on the road on this next trip, that inverter is coming out, and this will take its place so that when we're plugged into shore power, it will recharge the battery automatically, at least until we get an all-in-one charge inverter, solar charge controller combination, however we decide to do that project. Nevertheless, the battery is at a 100% state of charge. The Deca batteries. What I did there is I charged each battery individually until it was fully charged. And then I let them each sit and rest for about 24 hours. Then I load tested each battery. And to my surprise, I had a bad battery that I didn't even know about. One of them passed the load test. The other one did not, and the voltage had dropped over the couple days that it sat. So then I wired them in parallel and I allowed them to balance. So they sat for a good 24 hours, wired in parallel with no loads on them, just so the voltage would balance. And it actually brought the voltage up on the bad battery and down a little bit on the good battery, which is typical. It's exactly what I expected to see. So after sitting in parallel for 24 hours balancing, then I put them on the charger again and top charged them as a single unit. And when I did that, I charged them with the positive side of the charger on the positive of one battery and the negative charger lead on the negative terminal of the opposite battery, so that it would flow through both batteries for sure, getting it the absolute most charge you could possibly put in there to give these batteries the best advantage they have. I still honestly feel that they're not even going to come close to what the Power Queen battery can do, but I wanted to hedge their bet the best I possibly could. Now, I feel like one of the reasons that one of these batteries is weak is because the way they were wired in the trailer. Basically, the two batteries were wired in parallel, but then the positive lead feeding the 12 volts came off of one battery, and so did the negative. So they weren't really crossing through both batteries all the time. And that means when there's a high amp draw and instant demand for power, the battery that is going to take the brunt of that load, and then it's not basically it's not going to share equally with the second battery. If you guys look in the solar system in Project Goliath, when I wired those two batteries in parallel together, then when I ran them to the inverter, again, I used the positive from one battery and the negative from the other battery. That way, no matter what, power had to flow through both batteries evenly. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So we're going to hook up an inverter, and we're going to put a load on it, and we're going to see how long they last. Now, if you watched the camping video on the Halstead Homestead channel just the other day, I had mentioned that I had an inverter that I wanted to use, and it didn't work. So I bought that little 400-watt inverter so we could charge our phones and cameras and stuff while we're doing that trip. Well, a 400-watt inverter isn't enough to do the test I'm about to do. And this is the inverter that I had. It's an old Ingersoll Rand, basically through Thermo King, which is like an APU company for semi-trucks. I was really disappointed that this didn't work. So this is rated as an 1800-watt inverter, and it would have been perfect for the test that I wanted to do. But that's not going to happen. So yesterday or the day before, I ran out to Walmart and I picked up this EverStart inverter. Now, this isn't a really high quality inverter. It's an El Cheapo from Walmart. It was about 150 bucks if I'm not mistaken, but it is rated for 1500 watts continuous power. And I'm hoping that that will be enough to run the test that we're going to do. The load I'm going to put on is a heat gun that I can change the settings on. So I'm hoping I can find a setting as close to that 1500 watts so that we don't overload it, but draw as much as possible so that we can speed this test along. If we did this test with an LED light, it would take days to kill the lead acid batteries. It would probably take weeks to drain down to the lithium iron phosphate. We don't want to wait that long. All right, so the EverStart inverter, it has a digital display screen, so it will actually show us the wattage that is being used by our load. So that'll be great for monitoring purposes, but it also has a low voltage protection feature in it. So when it gets down to 10.5 volts, it will shut itself off. And it's designed to do that to protect the batteries. Because remember, with any AGM or deep cycle lead acid chemistry battery, you can only discharge to about 50% depth of discharge without doing damage to the batteries. Where lithium, you can go almost to zero, I believe. So anyway, let's get this hooked up and let's put it to the test and see how long it takes to shut the inverter off. All right, we have the inverter hooked up, but I tell you what, guys, cheap inverter. There's these little caps that come on the terminals so you can cover them up. See, they're designed to protect the terminals. But once you've got the battery cables on there, they no longer lock into place. So they don't stay where they're supposed to offer the insulation that they're supposed to. Now, I have to mention, these cables came with the inverter. They're designed for the inverter. So just cheap quality. You know, I am a little concerned. Like I said, this is a 1500 watt inverter, but it's awfully small. Look at the size of my hand. I mean, I have a big hand. But anyway, it's a lot smaller than most 1500 watt inverters. And I wanted to order a nicer one, but we're getting ready to go out of town and I need to get this battery put back in the trailer. So I didn't want to have to do this test on the road. Because to do this test on the road, I also have to drag these batteries with me around for the next month on the road as well. And I didn't want to do that. So we're trying to get this done tonight so that when we leave in 2 days, I don't have to bring all this stuff with me. I'll probably bring the inverter, but I won't bring these old batteries. All right, and for the load device, we're going to use my trusty Cobalt heat gun. I've had it for years. It's always been a fantastic tool, and it's worked great. So we're going to get opened up. I'm going to see if I can read what the specifications say on it. All right, you can see there, it is rated for 1500 watts. So I'm assuming that's on the high setting, which will work perfect because this inverter is supposed to handle 1500 watts continuous, according to the directions. Sometimes you can be careful with inverters. It can be misleading. It'll say 3000 watts, but it can't handle 3000 watts continuous. That will be the max for the surge input. Like when you first start something up, sometimes it draws more power, but its continuous rating might only be like 2200 watts. So I was very careful in reading the directions on this, and it says it can handle 1500 watts continuous. So not only are we testing batteries here, we're kind of testing this inverter too, subsequently. Okay, guys, so I've got the camera set up so you can see the stopwatch. You can see the inverter face. So we're going to get this thing started up, and we're going to see how long it takes. All right, powering the inverter on. 0 watts. So let's start up and put this on high. See what it does. Let's go ahead and hit start on the stopwatch. All right, so it looks like we're only drawing, at the moment, 511 watts. Let's see if I can turn up the gun. So here, it's only set for like 930 degrees. Let's turn the temperature up. All right, 1200 degrees. That's as hot as it goes. And the fan is all the way up. Now it looks like it's only allowing 510 watts to come through. So I'm a little puzzled here. We're definitely blowing hot air, so there's still a load on it. Let's just see how long it takes. So although I don't know 100% what's going on, but it seems like I can only get it to draw about 509 watts. Now, the gun is turned up to high range, high fan speed, but it doesn't sound to me like it's running as high as it normally does. Now, the inverter is making so much noise because the fans on it are working that maybe it's just drowning it out. But what's interesting is there's also a battery meter on that inverter, and it's showing that the battery is very low charge. And I literally just took the batteries off of charge 10 minutes before we started this. So there's no reason they shouldn't be fully charged. But remember, got a weak battery, so that capacity is going to be diminished. When you've got batteries wired in parallel like this, you only have as good of a battery bank as your weakest battery. Wow, that did not take long at all. Right now the timer says 26 minutes and 49 seconds. Now I left for a few minutes. I really thought this would take at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before it killed this battery at 500 watts. But I went inside to make some dinner, and the time that it took me to basically nuke some leftovers and get back out here, I was going to eat it here while watching it. I come back in and it's already turned off. I'm going to have to go to the other camera to see exactly how long it was when it turned off. You know what, before we do that, let's try turning it off. Back on, we'll see what it says. Right now the heat gun is not on. I want to see what it says for battery voltage. All right, let's turn it on low. It's back on. It's drawing 24 watts. There we go, let's get the heat going. Now I just checked the voltage with this meter and it says it's 11.3, so I'm not sure why it shut off. Whether it's from low voltage or maybe it just overheated, but it's not hot. It's now beeping at me again and it's got an alarm going off. And it shut down again. It was only on for a minute and a half. Wow, guys, so I went back and watched the video from the other camera while I was gone, and it was 17 minutes and 45 seconds when the alarm sounded and shut the inverter down. Now, the inverter doesn't tell me whether it shut down because of a low battery voltage or if it shut down because it was overheating. However, if it was only drawing 500 watts, it's designed for 1500 watts continuous, I don't see how it would have overheated, but I can't be sure of that. We may have an inverter problem. It may be a battery problem. I don't know, but I'm actually really excited to find out. So let's hook the inverter to the Power Queen battery and let's see how it does over there. All right, so now I've got the inverter hooked directly to the Power Queen lithium iron phosphate battery. Same load, same inverter, camera set up in a very similar fashion. We're going to run this test over again and see how it does on the new battery. All right, let's power the inverter on. Okay, inverter is on, up and running. Now we're going to turn on the load. And wait, let's see here. It does show, yeah, a much higher battery state. Yeah, I think this inverter is just struggling to handle the power of this heat gun. We are drawing more wattage this time than we were before. Oh, let's get our timer started. Drawing a little bit more wattage, but we'll see how she does. Now, I am assuming that this is going to take longer than it did with the other battery. Doing the math at 500 and, let's just say 500 watts, we should get about 5 hours of runtime out of this battery, give or take. So I am not going to sit here for 5 hours. I got a tractor to fix and a lawn to cut, and I got stuff to do. So I'm going to be in and out of the shop all day long, checking on this, and we'll see how it does. All right, although not a really impressive number, we've already gone 1 minute longer than we did on the AGM battery. So let's just keep watching it and see how long it goes. All right, guys, and here we are right about the double time frame mark, 36 minutes compared to 17 minutes and 45 seconds. And it's still going strong with no signs of it decreasing. So at this point, we've at least doubled the capacity, and actually a little bit more, because keep in mind we were running 509 watts continuous on the previous test, and this one's running about 540. So we've got a little bit higher wattage draw continuous, so we're actually more than double at this point. Hi guys, I was out cutting the grass and decided to take another break, come in and check it out, and the inverter had already turned off. So I went back and reviewed the footage, and exactly 3 hours, 11 minutes, and 32 seconds, the inverter shut off. So I don't even know how many times more that is than what we originally had. So I just did the quick math on it, and that is more than 10.5 times the capacity that we got with those AGM lead acid batteries. All right, guys, so in closing, we saw a huge difference. And I know that I'm going to get some flack from some of you because, yeah, I mentioned that we had a degraded battery there. We had one that failed a load test, and that there's going to be the argument that this isn't an apples to apples comparison. And you'd be right. Trying to convert typical flooded lead acid battery ratings to make them comparable can be a little bit difficult. So, I mean, doing some internet research and trying to find the data sheets on those Deca batteries, I went down kind of a rabbit hole trying to get all the comparisons. But in the end, if we had brand spanking new batteries, right? These are DP27, Group 27 batteries. So they are rated at about 80 amp hours each battery. So combined would be 160. Now keep in mind, deep cycle lead acid batteries still can only achieve a 50% depth of discharge without doing damage to the battery. So even at that 160, you still only get the 80 usable, right? Now, when you convert all that into watt hours, at full capacity would be 1,920 watt hours, where the Power Queen was 2,560 watt hours. So even at full capacity, it's going to fall short. But now keep in mind, at that 50% depth of discharge, you're only going to get 960 watt hours. So when you compare that to the Power Queen, you're still only looking at about 40% capacity with a brand spanking new battery. So no matter what, this test was going to go in the favor of the Power Queen no matter what. Now, what is apples to apples would be my personal upgrade. The batteries that I took out had a 17-minute capacity running 500 watts. The battery that I put in, which is a single battery, was half as much as the two batteries together. Lasted for over 3 hours and 11 minutes. So that is your apples to apples. What I went from to what I went to is a huge difference in capacity. So all in all, I'm going to call this test a success, and I was really excited to do it, and I learned a lot here. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And if you like this kind of content, please hit the like, share, and subscribe button. We always appreciate the support. And until the next time we see you, keep those engines running. Yeah, and by the way, that inverter from Walmart was absolutely terrible. I was not happy with it one bit, so I took it back and got my money back for it. I'm going to upgrade to a better one here in the future, so stay tuned for details on that.